I recently watched a video where someone was highlighting the Christian fiction books that they're looking forward to that are going to be released in between now and the end of the year. And so I figured, with my niche being Christian nonfiction, Christian theology, that might be a cool video for me to make about the books that I'm looking forward to be released until now, until the end of the year. So I did some digging. I read some previews, and I'm excited to share with you 9 books that I'm looking forward to being released between now and the end of the year. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to read all these books or even offer reviews of them, even if I do read them. But these are books that, as I scanned through the publishers' websites and as I scanned through some booksellers' websites, that stood out to me, that are going to be released anytime in September, October, November, or December. There are 9 books in total, so let's dive into it. I'm going to be covering these books in release order, so from first book to be released to the last. And the first book is called Proclaiming the Word by David Jackman. This book is going to be published by Crossway, and the anticipated release date is in early September. It is September 10th. Now, I'm on the hunt for a manual for completing expository sermons. And the way I define expository sermons are sermons whose main point and structure of their sermon is shaped by the main point and structure of the text that the preacher is preaching. I'm looking for a manual, how to prepare those sermons. I've read a ton on the theory of why expository preaching is important, and even what preaching is, and a vision for preaching. I haven't quite read something that gets down into the nuts and bolts. I'm hoping this book by David Jackman will help bridge the gap. Section 2 on skills for preparing sermons, I think, will be really helpful toward that end. So, Proclaiming the Word by David Jackman in September. The second book that seemed intriguing to me is called Pilgrim Prayers by Tim Challies, which is going to be published by Zondervan, and the release date for that is September 10th. Now, Tim Challies is basically the godfather of all Christian book content on social media. And so when I saw that he was coming out with a book, I knew I had to include it on this list, at the very least for that reason. This book is a collection of devotional prayers, devotional poetry, basically. And while poetry is not really my jam outside of the Psalms, I figured this might be good and worth taking a look at. I'm interested to get a sense of what these devotional prayers are like. You know, there have been several devotional books that have become pretty popular recently. You know, you think about Be Thou My Vision by David Gibson as a daily liturgy. There's been a couple of volumes of those. And so I'm interested to see how this might slot into aiding in one's devotional time by putting language to some feelings you might be feeling. The third book to make my list is called Mere Christian Hermeneutics by Kevin Van Hooser. This is published by Zondervan Academic, and the expected date for this is October 1st. Van Hooser has always been a little bit of an enigma to me. His works are often cited by a broad audience of people, but I haven't actually read any of his books. And this book seems to be in line with C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, where he lays out a vision for just almost generic or broad Christianity. Similarly, Van Hooser is trying to lay out a way of reading and understanding the Bible, it's just what hermeneutics means, that is not specifically Reformed or specifically evangelical, rather one that's merely Christian. You might think of a generic Christian hermeneutic. You know, I'm not so sure what I'm going to think about this, given as I consider how we read the Bible and understand what it says. At the very least, the doctrine of Scripture comes to mind as one doctrine that really affects the way that you read and study the Bible. So I'm interested to see how Van Hooser in this book might tackle that, where there are different branches of Christianity that have different doctrines of Scripture. And yet it seems like he's trying to posit one way that all Christians, regardless of their doctrinal differences, including maybe even your doctrine of Scripture, might be able to read the Bible in the same way. So yeah, I'm interested to see what comes of this project. He'll probably be making a significant contribution. I'm not sure if I'll read it. I might read some reviews instead, but the book is really interesting to me. The fourth book on my list is My Dear Hemlock by Tilly Dillahay. Now, this book is being published by Canon Press, and the expected date is October 1st. This book, My Dear Hemlock, is in the lines of C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. Letters from an elder demon to a younger demon seeking to torment a particular person. Another book recently came out in a similar vein, The Scuttlebutt Letters by Natalie Brand, and I thought that book was really good, really well written, valuable, funny even. And so I'm interested to see what Tilly Dillahay's take on this particular genre is. I'm glad to see more books being written like this. You might consider it to be a little derivative, but I like to see these different authors put their spin on it. In Lewis's book, it's an older demon counseling a younger demon seeking to tempt and lead astray a young man with the particular temptations that a young man faces. In Scuttlebutt Letters, it's a heart writing to a tongue. And here in Tilly Dillahay's book, it's a demon seeking to lead astray a young woman with the particular temptations that women face. And so, even though this book is fiction, it's a good reminder for us of the spiritual war that is very real, where Satan is prowling, looking for those who would be devoured. May we not be that kind of person, and may we read books like this that remind us of that reality so that we might not be led astray. So that is the fourth book on the list. The fifth book on the list is Blame It on the Brain by Ed Welch. This is actually a revision and updating of his 1998 book with the same title, Blame It on the Brain. I read this original book in seminary, and I'm really glad to see that he's edited it and revised it for the age that we live in, given that so much has changed, and I'm sure even in the science behind it, the understanding of the human brain has grown. So in this book, Welch kind of discerns between what is simply fallen human nature, not inherently sinful, and sinful actions or attitudes of the heart, and kind of determining how do these two fit together and how might they even affect one another. How does our sinful activities affect our physiology and biology and vice versa? And so I'm excited to read this book so that he can help me distinguish between brain disorders and problems that find their root in our hearts. The next book is called Consider the Lilies, Finding Perfect Peace in the Character of God by Johnny Artavanus. This book is coming out from Zondervan, and the expected date for that is October 8th. Now ask anyone under the age of 30 or 35 what they're currently struggling with, and I guarantee you almost that in their first breath, they will say anxiety. Anxiety is so prevalent. Anxiety, stress, depression, all of that kind of thing is so prevalent in our world right now. And yet, up until now, I haven't had a strong book to put in the hands of someone who is wrestling with anxiety, who is wrestling with stress. And so I'm optimistic that this book, Consider the Lilies, might be the book that I reach out and put in their hands of the person who is wrestling with anxiety. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't read this book yet, but when I saw that it was coming out and when I saw the author, I have a good sense that, who knows, this could be a good book for someone wrestling with that issue. Book number 7 will be Daily Doctrine by Kevin DeYoung. This book will be published by Crossway, and the expected date for that is October 22nd. Now, I am a big listener of Kevin DeYoung's podcast, Life and Books and Everything. I listen to pretty much every episode because it's one of the few podcasts that are out there about Christian books. It kind of inspires me to one day create a podcast on the topic of my own. And this book, Daily Doctrine, has been something he's been talking about on that podcast for a really long time. Essentially like a daily devotional, except every single day there's a new topic of systematic theology. And so that'll be really nice. Bite-sized chunks, systematic theology, quotes from church history, quotes from notable theologians, and just a little bit every single day, just basically dripping that systematic theology content in your mind. I think this will be great as an addition. Read a page of this at the end of your daily quiet time and grow a little bit more in your knowledge of the faith each day. I'm looking forward to checking this out, getting my hands on a physical copy of this book. Book number 8 is called Living in Wonder by Rod Dreher. And this book is being published by Zondervan, and it's dropping on October 22nd. And I don't agree with everything Rod Dreher writes. Many things that he writes I don't completely align with, but I find him to be an important thinker. And I've found his books, The Benedict Option and Live Not by Lies, to both really be spurring my brain and my mind toward thinking about how we addressed the cultural realities of our day with the gospel. So I don't agree with it all, but it at least gets me thinking, and he's at least putting an option out there on how we might be able to face these cultural issues of the day. So that being said, this book relates to the idea of re-enchantment. So how we can see the world as more than a series of random, unrelated atoms, but find some kind of mystery or higher purpose in it. I'm not sure what I'm going to think about this, but I have seen people that are online, so not in real life, but people on various social media platforms, somewhat shifting to the mystical traditions of Christianity. Eastern Orthodox, things like that. And so I'm interested to see how he might address that and at least get me thinking on the issue of re-enchantment. The last book on my list, book number 9, is called Making Sense of Man by Dr. Vern Poythress. Now, I had Dr. Poythress in seminary, and so looking forward to reading this book. This is coming out from P&R, and it's expected to come out on November 13th. So this is the last book chronologically on my list. I don't read everything Dr. Poythress cranks out because he writes books at a blistering pace, and his books are often very, very long. But I think the doctrine of man is an especially important doctrine in light of the world and the cultural realities we're facing today. I'm looking forward to checking out what Dr. Poythress has to write on the doctrine of man, particularly as he takes a tri-perspectival approach to it. So those are the 9 books that I'm looking forward to checking out, if not reading and reviewing before the end of the year. What are the new releases that you're looking forward to reading? I would love to know, so feel free to comment below, let me know, and check out one of these other videos here if you are interested in watching more of my YouTube videos.